the longest living British monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, peacefully passed away on September 8, 2022 in Balmoral Castle, Scotland, marking the end of an era. So, to commemorate her life, let's take a look at the story of Queen Elizabeth II. Elizabeth II was born on April 21st, 1926, to George and Elizabeth, Duke and Duchess of York, respectively. At that time, the king was George V, who was Elizabeth's grandfather, and Elizabeth's father George, who was Duke of York at that time, was second in line to the throne behind his elder brother Edward, Prince of Wales. And Elizabeth was raised very well and cherished by her family, who affectionately called her Lilibet. Queen Elizabeth's younger sister, Princess Margaret, was born on August 21st, 1930. When King George V died on January 20th, 1936, Edward, Prince of Wales, became King Edward VIII. But in the following turn of events, Edward VIII became entrenched with his proposal to Wallis Simpson, an American citizen who was divorced from both of her previous two husbands. As the monarch of the UK is also the official head of the Church of England, which did not allow any divorced member to remarry if their past spouses were still alive, so Edward VIII announced at the end of the year that he would be abdicating the role of king in order to marry Wallis Simpson. As Edward had no children at the time, the title of king passed on to his younger brother George, Duke of York, who would become King George VI at the end of 1936. Therefore, Princess Elizabeth, elder daughter of George VI, became the heir to the throne. And the princess was just 10 years old at this time. And when World War II broke out in 1939, Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret moved to the famed Windsor Castle, owing to concerns of German attacks on British soil. And over the war, Princess Elizabeth's relationship with Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark grew, and on November 20th, 1947, Prince Philip, now the Duke of Edinburgh, married Princess Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Philip had 4 children: Prince Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward. Prince Philip became the longest-serving royal consort in the world, serving for 69 years before he passed away in 2021 at the age of 99. In 1952, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip were on a trip to Australia and New Zealand, with a halfway stop in the African country of Kenya. And on their return trip, Philip was told of some very grave news, that King George VI, Elizabeth's father, had passed away. And Philip then conveyed this news to Elizabeth, who then returned to London as Queen Elizabeth II. And the next year, Elizabeth was ceremonially coronated as the Queen at the age of 25 years. The coronation event was the largest at the time, with a television audience of over 20 million people, as estimated by the BBC. In 1977, Queen Elizabeth celebrated her Silver Jubilee, marking 25 years of her rule as Queen, and she was 50 years old on the anniversary of her accession. In 1992, the 65-year-old Queen marked her Ruby Jubilee with 40 years of service to the Commonwealth. But that year, a series of multiple events, including a fire at Windsor Castle and the breakdowns of 3 of her children's marriages, led her to designate that year her Annus Horribilis, or horrible year in Latin. In 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales, died in a car crash at the age of 36, causing widespread grief, not just in the UK and the Commonwealth, but around the world. 2002 marked the 75-year-old Queen's Golden Jubilee of 50 years since her accession to the throne. but it was also marked by the deaths of the Queen's mother, also named Elizabeth, and of her younger sister, Princess Margaret. In 2012, at the age of 85, she celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, marking the 60th anniversary of her accession. And in 2015, she became the longest-serving British monarch in history, surpassing Queen Victoria's reign of 63 years from 1837 to 1901. In 2017, when the Queen was 90 years old, she became the first British monarch to celebrate a Sapphire Jubilee, marking 65 years of her reign. And this year, in 2022, the 95-year-old Queen Elizabeth II celebrated her Platinum Jubilee, marking the 70th year of her reign as Queen. Celebrations took place all over the Commonwealth realms, but by this point, the health of the Queen, aged 96 now, was rapidly deteriorating. And now she was staying at Balmoral Castle in Scotland for her annual summer holiday. On September 6, 2022, despite her frail condition, the 96-year-old Queen Elizabeth appointed her 15th and last Prime Minister of the United Kingdom under her reign, who was Liz Truss. And she was actually appointed at Balmoral Castle, which was pausing the tradition of appointing prime ministers at Buckingham Palace. The reason for this was to accommodate for the Queen's health. And that's because just 2 days later, on September 8th, 2022, the Queen's doctors expressed their concern for her condition, and that now she was in medical supervision at Balmoral. And a couple of hours later, Buckingham Palace broke the news. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral Castle this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow, September 9th. The death of Britain's longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, was a true shock to many, and tributes from world leaders and common citizens alike flooded in the minutes and hours after her death was announced. All of the Queen's children, alongside her grandsons Prince William and Prince Harry, were at her bedside when she passed away. The Queen's eldest son, Charles, Prince of Wales, became King Charles III, and his wife Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, became Queen Camilla as the Queen Consort of King Charles III. The King and Queen then traveled to Buckingham Palace on September 9th, where Charles gave his very first address to the nation as King of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. The immediate heir to the throne as of now is King Charles' eldest son, Prince William. A 12-day mourning period is currently being held, and it is expected that the 12th day after the Queen's death marks her state funeral. Elizabeth was the 40th monarch in a royal line that traces its origin back to the Norman king William the Conqueror, who claimed the English throne in 1066 after defeating Anglo-Saxon ruler Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings. Queen Elizabeth II had the longest reign among British monarchs and the second longest verifiable reign of any monarch in history, surpassed only by Louis XIV of France, who served for 72 years, which is just 2 more than the Queen's reign, which was 70 years long. And this 70 years of the Queen's reign has seen 15 British prime ministers, starting with Winston Churchill in 1952 and ending with Liz Truss just 2 days before the Queen's death in 2022. Queen Elizabeth II initiated many social reforms, engaged with the public, heralded the age of modern democracy, and the parliamentary system of the modern British government, which is the inspiration for most of the democracies in the world today. Under her rule, Britain adopted the system of decolonization by freeing most of its remaining colonies around the world. The British Empire transformed into the Commonwealth of Nations, and the Queen now became the Queen of 14 other countries besides the United Kingdom. Those countries are Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Belize, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Grenada, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and Tuvalu. And the Queen overall is such a great human being, and we're all blessed to have had her as the Queen for the longest amount of time compared to any other British monarch in history. So rest in peace, our dearest Queen Elizabeth II. Love you, Akash.